Thank you. Welcome everyone to the March 7th, 2023 budget work session. Please stand for the pledge. Daryl, would you like to lead us in the pledge?
Sure. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. All right, we are going to move on to our budget presentation. Mr. Wilfield, take the floor.
Thank you, Mrs. Gates. So this is our first look at the appropriations side of our budget. I'll flip through the initial slides rather quickly until we get to the meat of tonight's presentation. Just stopping briefly if you have questions or comments, we can go take anything up. Okay, so this is where we're at in the terms of the budget calendar. The first draft, March 2023. We have another draft we'll present formally in April, and then adoption also in April. We can update the budget at the next meeting in March as well. Go ahead, Jess. These are just a review of our fund balance plan and our budget goals and guidelines carried over from last year. Still that a heavy instructional focus and utilizing the federal funding initiatives as you see on the screen, and the trying to continually invest in our operation infrastructure. Again, these were the initial budget estimates from New York State. They remain the same as the state's in its, well, this is our current year aid, no significant changes taking place. Go ahead, Jeff. This is the original budget estimate based on the governor's proposals, currently with the legislature now as they debate and come up with their bills. It would be nice to have an on-time budget by April 1st, and then these revenues could be solidified. The tax cap calculation, which was filed at the end of February with the state, it was at 2.48%. It's very slightly different from the 2.53, I think, in the previous presentation. Just adjustments in the tax levy exclusion calculation based on state aid projections. These are the positions that we're currently investing under Carissa and ARP. Approximately 57 positions, and you see how they divide out there amongst different categories. First look revenues, again, that's just incorporated the numbers we talked about previously. Go ahead, Jess. And so here we are tonight, initial appropriations up 4.97%. 72% of the number, $105 million roughly, is salaries and benefits. That's a little bit under the 2023. Almost 74% of our budget was salaries and benefits. Again, this is based on a steady state, if you will, projection of our positions. We have not added or subtracted positions from this current year's operation. This plan also includes replacing all known retirements. So those are the things that are being discussed now on a daily basis inside the district. Today we had a meeting with a principal group and got their feedback on some instructional planning, and we've been meeting daily on these topics for the last week or so. Also included in this is summer programming. Remember last year we did a large elementary school summer program. It was paid for out of the ARP grant. That was a one-time utilization of ARP funds specifically dedicated for that purpose. So we've now built that into the general fund. Does not include the high impact tutoring requirement currently being considered by state education and the legislature. We're still working through getting details on what's required, and we have a meeting with our principals again the second half of this week to look at their data and decide what's the best way we can do that. if utilized at 771,000, it's approximately 10 or 11 full-time positions. This is a mandate for the 2024 school year only. So, I mean, we have to be careful with how we deploy these funds and to make sure we can really impact the student population. Our benefit number is up 4.44%. The primary contributor to that is the initial projections from our actuary and our advisor on our own self-funded plan, up about 12% based on really a high cost trends and the pharmacy side in particular. I think I can certainly testify to the fact that drug advertising seems to be very good and right on target. If you look at our top 10 pharmacy applications, you see ads for them daily on television. So the pharmacy industry certainly has the power. And we also have higher enrollment in that plan, which also drives some of the increase. So about 8 or 9% of it is true medical and pharmacy costs, with another 2 or 3% on the enrollment side. More people taking the health care, taking the plan. And then you see the comparison with salaries and budgets for last year. And again, I just want to emphasize the underlying statement. This is a rollover of current positions and a replacement of all retirements, which is a good starting point, and the debate internally continues. Any questions there?
Yes, I have a question.
Sure.
So you have built $250,000 for summer programming into the general fund.
Right.
For how many more years? Are we anticipating that to continue this every year?
You want to go?
Yeah, so the elementary program was non-existent for a little while. We've always had one. We brought that back, when COVID came around. So I would anticipate that we would want to run some kind of summer programming. The elementary program is going to take place at one campus this year, so we've combined that a little bit. We'll realize some efficiencies there as well. The middle and high school, the middle school program is, we call it credit recovery. They don't technically recover credits because they don't accrue credits in middle school, but it's ELA and math focused. And then there's the high school program, which is credit recovery. And we also have incorporated Regents exams, exam prep, plus we offer the Regents exams for our students too, which really does help our students to graduate. So, I mean, those are the basics that I would recommend that we want to consider moving forward. I don't know that that's necessarily going to hit that $250,000 amount every year. Something else that we added to was the Stepping Up program last year that we got some good feedback on. That was that the high school's kids transitioning into 8th and 9th grade. We got some good feedback on that as well. That was something that, we're exploring right now, the possibility of running that again. And then one of the other things that we looked at too was some of our students that have disabilities participate in the extended school year. So through their IEPs, they qualify for extended school year programming. BOCES, where they typically would receive that programming, really was stretched very thin last year, and we had to really get creative. We were able to get everybody into a program, but we are also looking at potentially running some programming in district alongside, primarily at the elementary level, alongside the elementary summer school program, so that those students can be assured. It's going to take some of the strain off of BOCES regionally, and other districts will be thankful that we're doing this too, but it's also going to, we think we have some ability to be able to service some of these students. I won't say they're students that necessarily have some of maybe the higher, more involved needs, but they're students that still qualify nonetheless, that we feel as though we can support in district as opposed to sending them out to BOCES. So I say sending them out because I will say a lot of the programming takes place here. They use our middle schools. They kind of rotate back and forth. So does that get at the question?
Yes, it does.
Okay.
Thank you.
I do have a couple questions about summer school, but I don't want to get into them right now. But I would like to have that kind of laid out exactly what the plan is for summer school. I know you just said a lot there, but I'd like to, before we, get too far down the road, would like to know more specifics on summer school.
Sure.
So we can have that discussion. I think it's, you got the money earmarked for that right now currently. So that's all well and good. I'd just like to know more about.
Yeah, we have all that, Vince. Yeah, we have that.
dive into that this evening.
Yeah, we can actually put that in, just in like a document and get that out there to you.
Thank you.
What is the high-impact tutoring requirement that you said, SED?
Yeah,
might
it's for
be
third
implementing?
to eighth graders who have underperformed, if you will,
ELA and math.
ELA and math only. So it really, for us, you want to address what it could be, or?
Sure.
We are discussing a variety of ways we can utilize the funding. The idea that's currently on the table, and we have to discuss this still with our elementary buildings, we talked today with secondary folks, is to implement a learning lab at each elementary building, similar to what we have at the middle schools, and then have a program that we pilot via this lab, an iReady, if you will, that not only is the benchmarking, but also provides to us the growth monitoring pieces that we currently don't have in some of our programming. So it will give us a sort of a two-for-one of our investment in a potential new program that helps us to monitor progress for our kids and see how much they are growing, and also target individually. For example, iReady is a program that can tell us, based on every single student, what their individual needs are, and then how the teacher can inform their instruction to help move those kids along, and then take another benchmark assessment, growth monitor in between. So that's just one idea that we've thought of that might be a good investment of the funds. It is a one-year funding, so we really want to be cognizant and careful with how we're utilizing that funding. We don't want it to result in any layoffs, if you will. So we really have to be strategic in how we utilize that and help kids at the same time, so.
Thank you.
Can I just ask one question?
Sure.
So is our district using iReady and MAP assessments?
No, right now we only have MAP, but we have some deficits in MAP that we're looking to potentially move away from, potentially, because we do need the parts in between the posts of the fence. So we need the middle part that tells us in between Administration 1 and Administration 2, what are some of those targeted areas of instruction that we can be implementing. It's more prescriptive, if you will, and helps us as teachers to meet the needs of the kids and meet them where they're at and help them to grow. So we're looking at a variety of things potentially. We are also looking to revamp our MTSS process, and that will be part of the discussion that takes place too, as part of that.
Okay, thanks.
Any other questions on this slide?
Nope.
Okay. Moving to the equipment side, the large portion of the increase in equipment is under consideration, HVAC control upgrade district-wide. We have different systems in different stages of development in different buildings. I actually believe, if I'm correct, that we still have a pneumatic system or two.
Very little, we're almost.
So this would get us up to speed on being able to control, better control temperatures, utilities, usage, and those things. And the departments were encouraged to bring forward these initiatives this year. I think in the past, they've been possibly, glossed over a little bit, and we're trying to bring them to the forefront and really get a hold of the things that we can invest in and get a return on. Under the contractual side, you see that, there's another initiative, $250,000 for cell phone repeaters district-wide. There are buildings, including this one, where at any given moment, in any given room, you are without cell service.
We've gotten feedback consistently, from any number of people, including many people sitting around this table, that they struggle to utilize their cell phones in certain aspects of the district, so.
Higher diesel and natural gas prices. These are compared to what we budgeted for this current year. So actually lower than we're receiving now, but I have to make up for what we didn't budget for in this current year. That's the same for the special education tuition placement line. We're running about $1 million over budget in the current year on that line. Just a combination of new identified students as well as transfers into the district that come with placements. Doesn't take a lot of transfers in at $100,000 a child to generate $1 million.
I'm sorry, is that 1.7 million more this year, or is that the total?
That's $1.7 million additional for 2024 over the 2023 budget. But I can tell you that in 2023, we're already $1 million over budget, so it's really $796,000 of the new money. So we're pulling from other budget codes to fund the tuition line currently. I'm also beginning to segue the SROs into the general fund budget. Currently paid for, to actually split between the general fund budget and the Carissa and ARP funding. I think their impact on our buildings, and you've seen presentations by them, has been very, very well received, and they're part of our fabric now. So we're trying to build the budget to include that funding and have that as a forward-looking item. Any questions on those items?
I guess it probably has nothing to do with this budget, since I don't remember hearing anything about a vote on it. Has there been any movement towards having the special education fund being its own budget, kind of like we have the buses and capital improvement?
The reserve,
Has there been
you
any
mean?
movement on that?
No, nothing
Nothing?
yet.
Is
It's a
it
state
just gone
level.
now, or?
I wouldn't say it's gone, and Jan, you can probably speak to this, but it's an ongoing ask that they allow us to create special education reserves. It's just, it doesn't exist at this point, so.
I just didn't know if we had any positive.
Nothing positive at this point.
No. There's also been some discussion too of having, if you budget for it for the given year, that the money that you budgeted would travel with the student to the next district just for the remainder of the whatever year they transferred to. I think that comes with some pitfalls too, but I know that that's come up as well at the state legislature, so stay tuned.
Thank you.
It's been on the wish list for quite a while.
It has.
I would say the meetings between the business office and the special ed office occur weekly. So we have a good chain of communication there, and we're trying to get on top of future needs. The next month will be a lot of decision-making on that regard. The BOCES budget, really looking to hold it at less than inflation, if you will. The BOCES capital project is winding down, so we have one more payment to make on that. We seem to have peaked a little bit on our CTE slots, and our P-TECH slots have actually come off a couple of slots. So next month, or later this month, I'd like to be able to present pretty much a category-by-category outline to you of the BOCES budget, but we're just not quite there yet. We will be there by the end of the month. The budget to do in April to BOCES. Debt service is up. We'll be borrowing $20 million in June to fund the wrap-up of Phase 2 and the beginning of construction on Phase 3 and the roofs from Phase 4. So we continue to advance that. After that, this $20 million, there's less than $20 million available to borrow for the whole remainder of the project. So we are nearing that point in time where we're at the end. Transfers are up a little bit due to there's a higher level of retirements this year. We have some post-employment benefits that get paid out. They're done in this format. CSEA and WISTA staff can elect for payments post-employment. And the district has the funds to make these payments, and this is just the line we make them on. So they're contractual.
Can I ask you a question? Can you explain what transfers means? Can you explain what that means, transfers? I don't understand what the term means.
Transfers usually occur when you move money from one fund to another.
Okay.
So the capital outlay project is funded by the general fund, where we transfer the $100,000 to the capital fund to actually spend the money. That would be an inter-fund transfer. Historically, this district has booked the payments to retiring employees on the transfer line as well, so I have not changed that, I've just left that in place. I actually like that it's segregated from the benefit line, so it gives us a clearer picture. There's the summary of where we're at right now. You can see the increases. Again, we went through the explanations why. Happy to entertain further questions. The new line on there is bus purchases. Transportation is looking for 8 buses, totaling $983,000 for our 65-passenger buses, for our 30-passenger buses. So we have the quote right here, and the prices of buses are up considerably. On the large buses, it's about $135,000 a unit. So base price. So we ran into a problem this past year actually getting delivery of buses. We finally have delivery, although late. Usually we get it in the summer. We got it in February, I think. So bus manufacturers are living the dream right now. And we haven't even got to electric buses. Topic for another day. So there's the bus purchase proposition. Then next time that you see it, I'll actually build in the detail from the quotes so you see the types of buses and the cost. We have a $2 million bus reserve, which we fund purchases with, and the object will be to replace the purchases if we have a surplus in the current year and keep that reserve at or about $2 million. The capital outlay project, I'm going to look to my facilities friend. We haven't made a final decision yet on what we're doing for next year. We have not. So we have several different things under consideration, and I'll probably be able to report at the next meeting what we've chosen to do. Again, this is a $100,000 one-time, one building project. Can't go a nickel over $100,000. All in, has to be done by June 30th. So it's interesting, but it's a great use of funds, and we get the aid back. We'll get our $70,000 back immediately in the next year. So it's really a net $30,000 investment.
Have they ever updated that number?
No.
There's been a lot of proposals to make it 250, to make it
5.
multi-building, which would be very, very helpful and would help districts, do more maintenance type things, more, still long-term things, but, replacing window caulking or something a little bit bigger and be able to handle more things and more buildings. Here, it's very restrictive, but it's still the best deal we have for addressing some of these little things. Go ahead, Jess. Thank you. So here's what we're doing now. We're refining the salary projections and evaluating the needs. I mentioned that earlier. We're building the BOCES budget, which is about 800 lines of programming that you'll see condensed. Employee benefit projections, we continue to work with our actuary to make sure that we're good on our self-funded plan. And we're looking at the federal side to maximize positions under the ARP grant, which is the only remaining grant for fiscal 2024. Carissa expires this summer. So we have enough room in the ARP grant as it looks right now to absorb the positions from Carissa into the ARP grant for one final year. We monitor the state budget formulation to see if the state aid increases come through as promised. And at the end of February, we submitted to the Office of the State Comptroller our tax cap calculation, indicating that the mathematics generates a 2.48% possible increase. We also look at our reserve allocations and our current year performance to see what kind of funds are available to invest in next year and how best to fill any gaps we see in the program. And that is where we're at currently on budget. Any further questions?
I have a question. How much do we currently have in reserves?
Funny you should ask that. The district's fund balance, as of the last fiscal year audited, is $31 million. About $20 million of that is restricted between retirement reserves, worker compensation reserves, employee benefit reserves, and capital reserves primarily. This was part of the fund balance plan that was submitted, I think, to the board in December, but if anybody needs a refresher, we can recirculate that.
So there's 11 million unrestricted.
Unrestricted, yeah. The allowable unassigned portion of that is $5.5 million. That's the 4% of the budget number that you're allowed to have free and unassigned.
Well, that's up from last year, so that's good.
What's that?
That's up from last year. So that's a good thing.
Yeah.
So, I mean, just a lot of the conversations that we're having right now is, we have a significant number of retirements this year, so we really are trying to comb through that to determine, can we realize some savings through some attrition? So I know we kind of will start off by talking about essentially sort of rolling over the budget, the current budget that exists, currently right now, sort of maintaining everything status quo. But we are hopeful that there are some positions that we might be able to realize some of those efficiencies. That said, there's also, we're going to have to consider too any potential additions in the area of special education too, as we said. Excuse me. That's an area that, we have seen our classification rate, as you're aware, and I know we're going to have a presentation on tonight, but you've seen our classification rate increase. So, we are doing our best at this point to try to be able to say, okay, we're looking at section sizes, at the secondary level, for instance, class sizes of 18 versus class sizes of 20 or 21, things like that. Those are some of the conversations that we're having. We're looking at, specific areas. People don't always retire in areas that you have a lot of flexibility, so that's another factor that we need to be able to consider as well as we move forward into next year too. But I guess I would say, we looked at some of the things like the elementary class sizes or being able to, AIS, things like that. Any thoughts, feedback that, exists here? I mean, this is where, obviously I don't have to tell you this. This is one of the places that we should be having this conversation. So if there are specific questions or areas of focus that, that you'd like to see prioritized or for us to take a more critical look at, please throw it out there.
Just one final comment. Sooner or later, somebody's going to ask me what the tax rate impact will be. So by April, we'll know a rough idea of equalization rates. And by May, the towns have to file their tentative assessments, subject to dispute. So in April, we can take a best estimate, and then we did that in last year. We did one in April, one in May, and then one in July, as the data becomes more real. So you'll get one in April based on last year's assessment and new equalization rates. You'll get one in May based on tentative assessments and new equalization rates, and then you'll get one in July based on final assessments, final equalization rates.
Right. I think my question, I don't know if anyone else has any, but my question, I'm just wondering, is the goal to absorb all these remediation programs we've created due to COVID? So I think I'm seeing that it seems that's the case, but is that the intention, to absorb everything?
I want
Yeah,
to
I
finish.
think I'm
sorry.
done.
Okay. So I think in terms of absorbing the cost potentially, I mean, right now, I don't know that I can point at something and say we don't need this, or this isn't beneficial anymore. That's not to say a year from now, we might be at that point. I guess from my perspective, yes, and we want to try to free up as much space in our general fund to be able to support some of these things. You heard Will say, like, for instance, moving some of the costs of the SROs over into the general fund. We're going to have to do that eventually. I don't like to look at this. The grants are wonderful. Thank you very much, New York State. This is great. And the federal government, this is wonderful. I don't look at this as much of a cliff as maybe a steep slope that we have right now, because we do have fund balance that we can potentially, absorb some of the cost of these things too. But when you have a retirement, you look to see, can we realize some breakage? Can we say, let's not, I'm thinking specifically, we'll just use a teacher as an example. If it's a top step teacher, that's a significant amount of money if you don't have to replace that. If you've seen, hey, we can manage without this, or at the very least, if you're replacing with a first step teacher, there's a real savings there as well. So our foundation aid is up, so that's another benefit as well. I think in the big picture, when you talk about like an intervention program, like a summer school program, I think our summer school programs, and it's just my perspective here, I think they're valuable to helping our students, maintain and stop some of that summer slide. I don't know that they necessarily push us forward so much as they help us from sliding back, and that's typically what a summer program's for. The learning labs, we've gotten, great feedback on the learning labs. You talk to the middle school principals, they'll tell you that just seeing kids, they wander in and out of those things. They're very busy. Kids, it's self-directed, where the kids actually identify, I need to go and seek out this support. It's learners of all, abilities, and they're engaged. It's not kids just hanging out. They're really down there doing work. So I think there's a benefit that I think people feel regarding that, even to the extent that our elementaries are now asking questions about the possibilities of some sort of learning lab type model. Liz, you're asking the right question, in my opinion. You really are, and it's a question we keep asking ourselves: what efficiencies can we realize? So we starting point is saying, listen, we're going to replace everything that we have now. Is that the reality? No, I don't believe that's going to be the reality. I think we will be able to realize some efficiencies through attrition. But that doesn't mean that there's not still some areas that we need to continue to be able to support, and sometimes spending a little bit of money saves you money in the long run too. So I think there were some areas that were understaffed or underfunded in our district, leading into COVID, by nobody's fault of anything. We went through some pretty serious financial distress, a number of years ago, as you'll recall. So just trying to build up some of that infrastructure and that capacity is going to be important. We also have an aging workforce too, in some respects too. So we have certain groups where you just have people that are going to be within 5 years of retirement, and a large number of them. So trying to build for the future is also going to be important as well. So.
I guess I'm...
Could I just make a comment on that? Because, we're talking about absorbing those things or retaining the things that are being paid for through the grant. You're looking at $3.5 million in salary, right? That's coming from that grant. And, that grant's going away. What's not going away is on the other side, the supply and contractual, or the supply and contractual expenses that are up $2.8 million, and the employee benefits that are up $1.3 million, for another $5 million there. So those things are up. Those are increases. So that just ate up this $3.4 million. So we're actually, if you look at it that way, we're in a hole. So that's not going away. What's going away is $3.5 million in salary. So, yeah, I think there's a lot of questions to be asked about how do we keep from being upside down. You can retain these positions, because really what you'd be looking at is you'd be looking at an increase of $8.5 million on your budget if we were to retain this. So I think, things are going to continue to get more expensive. And some of the things that we've been doing, hopefully they've yielded results. I'm sure they have. But those were an emergency response. That's what this whole thing was, right? So, going through each one of these positions and how we can retain it and what its value is has to be done with a great deal of scrutiny. moving forward.
I fully agree.
Anybody else? I think one of the questions board members were going to ask is, you addressed it already, so to know the number, you know, and your next, I think you just stated it. I wish I wrote it down so clearly. No, I can't remember. Just the exact number that, you know, the percentage would be of increasing our taxes. So I want to say on the record, I do not like to increase taxes. I prefer not to. It's, everybody is paying more for everything. You know, our community, our taxpayers are struggling as well with all of the inflation. So I just feel that from my standpoint, if we could be more fiscally responsible and find areas to reduce cost, I would appreciate that conversation. That's just my standpoint and how I feel as a taxpayer and a mom and board member. What else was I going to say? I was wondering, learning loss. Are we still seeing the same amount of have students come along? Have they come to a point where we can say they don't need all these remediation services due to COVID? So I'm wondering, do we have the answer for that?
So I think it would be impossible to say they're not benefiting from it.
Yeah.
Of course, they're benefiting from it, but we need it. And is the benefit worth the investment?
I mean,
Yeah.
That's the question. That's $8 million.
yeah. I mean, just my take on that is I don't, I mean, kind of to your point, Vince, I think they're certainly benefiting from some of the support. There's certain areas like reading. I think, honestly, we were grossly understaffed in reading in the district. I just think we needed, you know, more reading support. But, you know, in terms of have students, like, is the learning loss done? I think there's a ripple effect. And I think, frankly, I think you compound that. I think we were under-supported in certain areas to begin with in COVID. Are kids adjusting and coming back? Yeah, I believe so. I really do. I think we're at a better place now than we were last year at this point. And I feel like I can say that. From an academic standpoint, from a social, emotional standpoint, I think things are starting to level off a little bit. So that's the good news, which I think does give us some license to you know, add that extra eye of scrutiny on, you know, whether it's a position or a program or whatever it is. I'm right there with you. I think we have to be able to do that. In terms of, you know, saying, okay, do we go back to what we had before in certain areas? Like I use reading as an example. I don't know that that's wise, because I think some of the, you know, the special education, you know, rate, for instance, increasing, I think is a result. I mean, it's not special education to classify a student with a disability isn't because you have to look beyond just, okay, they're classified or not classified. What is the nature of the disability? In so many cases, our students we're finding have reading deficits. So that's where, you know, you can say, okay, we've classified them, they're going to get integrated co-teaching or consultant teacher support, you know, in the classroom. Is that really what they need, or do they need to actually have somebody who's a reading specialist? My wife went to school to be a special education teacher, and she took exactly one class in reading. That's no knock to our special ed teachers. They're wonderful, and they're masters at modifying curriculum. But in most of the ones I know, that if a student truly has a reading deficit that is that significant, they're going to say, this child needs to have reading support, maybe in addition to special education support, but they need the reading support as well. So I use that as kind of an example to illustrate. I don't know that I would recommend in certain areas that we go back to like pre-COVID levels in some of our staffing.
I don't think we will.
Yeah, no,
I don't think we will, because we are supposed to get a lot more money from foundation aid, so.
Yeah.
Well, I think we'll get more information too, as like, you know, you're meeting with the principals and other groups to hear their needs and their priorities. That's important for us to know as well as we move forward. So.
Anybody else? Okay, I think we are done. The budget part.
Thanks, Will.
Thank you. All right, I believe I have to adjourn this meeting, so may I have a motion to adjourn the budget session, the budget work session?
I'll motion.
Okay, and a second?
I'll second.
Okay, we are adjourned.
All right, I'm going to go change my suit. I'll be right back.
All right, now, We are opening the regular board meeting now. So, Matt, if you need a minute, does anyone want to take a minute to use the restroom or anything?
Okay.
No?
I haven't
Okay.
finished my water yet.
Okay. All right, then we'll move on to our regular agenda. And I will pass it over to you, Mr. Bystrike, for your superintendent's report.
Okay, I know we have quite a bit of ground to cover here tonight, so I did check in with Liz a little bit before the meeting, so we're going to forego the assistant superintendent reports for the evening just for the sake of time. I'm going to, as a superintendent's report, I'm just going to comment on one thing that I got to see a little bit of today, not nearly as much as I wanted, but our unified bowling team had their culminating event over at Airport Lanes, and lots of staff made it over there. Great event. I mean, the place was packed, absolutely packed. And just a great program. I want to just, throw out props to Lauren Clark, who's the coach for the team, and encourage everyone to look out for Unified Basketball coming up. We've got some great cross-district things going on. They're going to be hosting some events over at West Senior, too. Majority of the kids are from East Senior, but they're trying to mix. The kids from West are saying, we want this, too. So I guess, watch your calendars. So there's going to be some good events coming up. So that's it. I'm just going to...
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Bystrike. I actually don't have much myself. I just wanted to tell the board members and the community that the board self-evaluation is complete, and I compiled the results, and it is now accessible to all of you. And I hope everyone had a nice February break. It was a quiet month, so I will move it on to our first presentation then. Actually, I get to move it on to my students' representatives report. I'm sorry, Sarah. You finally get your turn.
Okay.
All right, we have Sarah from East Senior here, so.
All right, there's quite a bit going on at East Senior this month. So our science club is holding a flower bulb fundraiser to help offset their costs for field research in the Bahamas at the end of the school year. They are planning on observing the tropical ecology and analyzing the relationships of fish with coral in the local ecosystem. Our Key Club is holding a Souls for Souls event. This is a top-rated nonprofit that works closely with their partners to make connections with people and communities so that they can provide shoes for people in need across the U.S. Our drive is going from March 20th to March 31st. Our music department is presenting The Lightning Thief, the Percy Jackson musical, from March 9th to 11th. Tickets can be purchased online. For Kindness Week, our 611 and 1211 classes made bookmarks with pick-me-up quotes that are going to be available for community members to be, they're going to be offered at the public library. Student Council held their annual craft show on March 4th this past weekend, along with running their Chris Kowskowski Cannon Bottle Drive Scholarship. And for our entire month of February, Rho Kappa National Honor Society celebrated Black History Month and took time to recognize and celebrate the achievements by Black Americans in the U.S. Events included a door decorating contest, an after-school movie showing the pursuit of happiness, a lesson, and a demonstration in slam poetry and musical entertainment from our jazz band. Student Services is in the process of collecting course requests from students for next year's classes and are preparing to take juniors to the National College Fair on the 16th. Our boys varsity bowling team won the Section 6 Division II championship, and they are going to compete at states on March 10th and the 12th. Student Council is holding their Red Cross blood drive on March 24th during school hours. Our science club performed an exploratory dissection of sheep hearts to get in the spirit of Valentine's Day.
Can you say that again, please?
Science Club performed an exploratory dissection of sheep hearts to get in the spirit of Valentine's Day. I've seen the pictures. I don't want to join Science Club. Mr. East rehearsals have started, and we're excited about the show. We are starting to promote it, and practice is, it's going. I wouldn't say it's going well yet. Our college information night will be sponsored by the counselors on March 13th at 6 p.m. Our orchestra will present the side-by-side concert on March 20th at 7 p.m. Our National Honor Society will hold their induction ceremony on March 29th at 6:30 p.m. The East Side Choral Festival will be held during the school day and Anything Goes concert at 7 p.m. on March 30th. Our Diversity Week is from March 13th to March 17th, and we will be celebrating and embracing our differences. We will bring attention to students with different abilities, LGBTQ students, and our different cultures. Besides the United States, our current students reside from over 16 different countries, including everything from Poland to India to Iraq to China. Diversity Week will include door decorating, dress-up days, taste of culture, a fashion show, and a unified basketball game. And our last thing on the list, March into Literacy. March into Literacy has been happening all month at East Senior. There was a good showing of read, since East is well-read, on March 1st, and the whole building read together. We have announcements outlining Women's Month with famous female speakers outlining, oh my gosh. With famous female diverse authors to tie everything in. We are having a Spirit Week around literacy and will be able to dress as our favorite characters and wear word t-shirts, just to name a few. There will be Wordle competitions and a March Madness called Judge a Book by Its Cover. The Literacy Committee put all of these activities together for students to enjoy and to find enjoyment in reading and writing. Student Council is sponsoring all of our efforts. Project Lit and Mrs. Tansky have been a great help with the collaboration, and we hope it goes well. That's the end of my report. Thank you.
Good job.
Nice job, Sarah. That's a mouthful. Single spaced on that paper too, I saw.
It was a lot. I just got this today, too. Like
great
4
job.
hours ago.
You did a great job.
Did a great job.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, at this time is the public comments section of our agenda. So if anyone would like to come to the podium and address the board, I just ask that you, I will give you 3 minutes, and I'll ask you to step up to the podium and state your name and address. Please be respectful in your comments, and do not divulge any personal or confidential information. If you'd like to be contacted, leave your information with the district clerk. Is there anybody in the audience who would like to address the board? Okay, good. We'll move on then. All right, our first presentation, or our second presentation tonight, will be special education analysis. Mrs. Fowler, would you take the wheel?
Good evening, everyone. I'd like to introduce our consultants that are here with us tonight. We have John McGuire and Richard Labrie. They may come up because they're going to be presenting here very shortly. And we have Dr. Michael Nyman, who is with us via Zoom, and I thank Jessica for pulling this off as best as we can. And he will be with us remotely tonight. John, Richard, and Michael are part of an organization called Alliance Education Associates, and they are very skilled in performing special education analyses. They have done over 300 across the state and the country, and are here tonight to share with us some of their findings. So, John, Richard.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. It's our pleasure to be with you here this evening. And also, we want to thank you for the opportunity to partner with your district in conducting this important work on behalf of your students. Michael, are you on board?
I can hear you, John.
Okay. Do you want to go ahead and kick it off?
Sure. So if we can refer to slide 3.
One second, Michael. We got one person running back and forth.
We're going to get Jessica a pair of skates.
Oh, that'd be cool.
Yeah.
Roller skate around.
Promise it works this time.
Thank you very much. Okay, Michael.
Okay, John. Perhaps you and Rich can introduce yourselves, and I'll introduce myself and start the next slide.
Okay. My name is John McGuire. I've been in education for 53 years. I started out as a special education teacher, working with emotionally disturbed adolescents in urban high schools. Moved from that to director of special programs for many years, then into various assistant superintendent for curriculum and instruction positions, and then superintendent of schools positions, from which I retired in 2010 in the Guilderland School District in Albany County. Since then, along with my colleagues, I've been doing analyses for schools, also doing coaching and mentoring of administrators, technical assistants, and professional development. That's 53 years and 53 seconds.
Good evening. My name is Rich Labrie. I'm a former collaborative superintendent from Massachusetts. Would be analogous to a BOCE superintendent here in New York. Did that for roughly 37 years. While there, we developed a Medicaid billing program for our member school districts, which we ended up marketing across the state. When I retired, we were doing Medicaid billing for 59 school districts in western Massachusetts and north central Connecticut. While there, we developed a school transportation program. We bought our own buses, hired our own drivers, and over the course of an 8-year period, we became the largest publicly owned school bus operation in Massachusetts. Transported about 19,000 students a day, about 2,500 of whom were special needs students. I've been retired for 12 years. I've been doing this type of work, over that period of time, and I enjoy it, and I thank you for the opportunity to work here.
Thank you.
Michael?
Yes, good evening, everyone, and I'm Michael Nyman. I'm a speech-language pathologist by trade, and for the past 10 years or so, I've been working with Mr. McGuire and Mr. Labrie and supporting school districts across New York and providing the very best programmatic and financial consulting services for school districts so they can provide special education and services to struggling and differently abled learners. So if we can refer to the next slide, John.
Yep.
Slide 3. So the primary purpose of this presentation to the Board of Education are fivefold: to review the methodology of the study, to present pertinent information for contextual purposes, to provide key findings, provide corresponding areas of opportunity or recommendations, and provide a forum for discussion. The forthcoming reports are quite full of information and data. All told, it'll be well over 100 pages. So the purpose of our presentation tonight is to really provide an overview of the findings, and again, provide a forum for discussion. At the very end, after Mr. Labrie's last slide, we open up the discussion, but if the board has any questions, we would welcome any kind of clarification or questions you have throughout. And I won't be able to see, but John and Rich, I'll defer to you if the board has any questions, and we can answer accordingly.
Okay. All right.
Next slide, please.
Yes, we're ready.
So when we engaged in this partnership, there were 6 discrete areas that we wanted to look at. One was related services, speech and language pathology, occupational therapy, physical therapy, those services that are related to the IEP that help students with IEPs maximize the benefit of their services. Utilization of paraprofessional or teacher aid supports. 3 and 4 are really related. Out-of-district placements and continuing services, we think about services that are available to students on IEPs. There's the continuum within the district, and then there are out-of-district placements, and we kind of look at them together. The 5th area is organizational structure and district coordination of programs and services. Our view is that special education works well, or works the best when there's a balance between the support from central office and what's happening at the school level. In 6, finances pertain to efficiencies in Medicaid recoupment and transportation, which we'll talk about at the end. Next slide, please.
Okay.
So the organization of this presentation is really analogous to that of the forthcoming reports. And the program report is organized and discussed regarding 2 main areas, which are organizational considerations. And we'll talk what that means when we get to those slides, but essentially it's things like culture and climate, professional development, staffing levels, organizational structure, and school expenditures devoted to special education. Those are the subcomponents that would fall under organizational considerations. Continuum of supports. We intentionally don't talk about continuum of services, which is an IDA or special ed term. We talk about a continuum of supports, which will include services like response to intervention, AIS, other areas within gen ed that are there to support students who might be struggling. We do talk about special ed in this area, but not just special ed. Again, we think about special ed as just one more way to support students who might need support. So the first thing that Mr. McGuire will be talking about in that area is response intervention. And again, just like the forthcoming reports, we discuss findings and areas of opportunity for each section. The last part of the presentation that Rich will be talking about address financial parameters, and will be presented in a similar format where he'll be talking about key findings in areas of opportunity or recommendations. Next section, or next slide, John.
All set.
How did we arrive at our conclusions? Well, we want this to parallel a research study where we have a very intentional methodology. And our methodology included interviews, over 125 confidential interviews with central office leadership, school-based administration, certified teacher, teacher aides, and related service providers. So through a combination of in-person and a lot of Zoom meetings, we talked to a lot of people, and that number feels very good to us. I think this is really speaks to leadership's wanting this to be a very open and transparent process to include as many people as possible. So that 125 interviews feels like a really nice number that a lot of people got to participate and have their voices heard. The questions were catered to the interview's particular area of expertise and relevance to the areas of review. So there were some overlapping questions like culture and climate that John will be talking about shortly. And then we had specific questions for each stakeholder group that were just designed for that particular discipline. So the questions we asked teachers were different than those we asked SLPs and related service providers, principals. So again, there were some intersecting content areas where we wanted people's perspective, but the majority of the questions were catered to people's individual disciplines. Comparative analyses to other average resource need districts within Erie County and New York State regarding student outcome and financial data. What you'll see in the report is a lot of data. It's very data rich with comparisons of student outcomes, things like graduation rates, student achievement data, expenditures. And what was nice about Erie County is with the average resource, we used districts in both BOCES 1 and BOCES 2 to arrive at that 21 comparison number. So there were 21 other average resource districts, which is the category that West Seneca is in, that we compared to. Document reviews, we looked at organizational structure, IEPs, we looked at 94 IEPs in terms of the level of services, the goal writing. Again, there'd be no way to tell the students that we evaluated or analyzed as part of the IEP process. It was all confidential, but that felt like a really nice number as well because it gave us a good sense of what the district was working, doing well in terms of IEPs and areas of growth or opportunity.
So we're going to turn now to some of our findings and opportunities in the areas of climate and culture. We always begin our work with climate and culture because, as you know, we're in a people-intensive enterprise. Everything that happens in schools happens in a people context, and in the absence of that ready and able culture and climate, other things become increasingly difficult. One of the things that we ask in all of our analyses is about what we call the culture of ownership. What we mean by that is to what extent do all of the adults in the schools see students with disabilities as their students? The ownership in the perception of those interviewed, those 174 people, was very positive. The perception was we've come a long way from the old days when special ed and general ed were separate and never the twain shall meet. We push people to give us a percentage. We know it's not scientific, but what does your gut tell you about what percentage of the people in the school are supportive and see and evidence ownership for special needs students? We had 75 to 95% as a perception, with a positive observation that this is far better than where we used to be. We're on a positive trajectory, moving closer and closer to what we would call a pervasive culture of ownership on the part of all adults for all students. It was a consistent impression of those interviewed that there was a positive relationship at the district level between special education and general education at West Seneca. This was a very positive and consistent perception across interviewees, and it was attributed voluntarily to current administration. At the school level, similarly, relationships were perceived by those interviewed as very positive between generalists and specialists, attributable to administrative support not only at the district level but at the building level on the part of building administrators, and to collaboration between specialists and generalists in support of all students. Some areas of opportunity under climate and culture. To continue the journey toward that pervasive culture of ownership, we would ask the district to consider developing professional learning communities inclusive of both special ed and general ed faculty. To create a mission statement that explicitly goes to the issue of ownership for all students. To provide principals and other recruiters with an operational hiring guide that makes it clear from the very posting of a position at West Seneca that ownership for students, working with students with special needs, and collaborating with special ed colleagues is best practice and therefore in our district an expectation of all. And to provide principals with the opportunity to take the lead in facilitation of meetings with parents of students with disabilities, for example, through Special Ed Advisory Council, for example, and that those meetings rotate across buildings in the district. Those are just some thoughts on opportunities you may want to consider. With respect to your Committee on Special Education and its processes and procedures, the perception of those responding was that this is going well, that they have a confidence level, they have a knowledge base, that the processes, procedures of the CSE are known, understood, and are uniformly and consistently applied. That basic concepts of least restrictive environment, of free appropriate public education, and so forth are generally understood by all stakeholders in the process. That those who contribute to the meetings know what is expected of them, understand the sequence of events, and can respond accordingly. There was also a perception of perhaps inconsistency across committees in terms of outcomes. This is not unique to West Seneca. You're a large enough system that you have multiple committees, you have good people in all of them. We have some thoughts about ways that you can ensure that uniformity. That we're not asking people to become cookie cutters. We know you deal with children, you're not dealing with widgets. On the other hand, you want to be sure that you have a system that mitigates toward equity of access. Differential outcomes can be a bad optic, quite honestly. Areas of opportunity around the CSE. Revisit the establishment, we would suggest, of your program descriptions. Flesh them out and the guidelines for eligibility and exit from each of them. Consider the creation of 2 diagnostic teams, freestanding. That would be one at the elementary and one at the secondary level. The advantages of this would be that they could focus on your triennials, your annual reviews, your initial reviews, and so forth. Take some of the burden off your building-based staff, freeing them up to provide more direct and indirect service to students in the buildings to which they're assigned.
I'm sorry, can you explain that just a little bit? Consider 2 diagnostic evaluation teams
Sure.
to do the evaluation of the students rather than the teacher that works with them?
The teacher would still be involved in the process, but for the people doing the evaluations themselves, a school psychologist to do the psychometrics, a teacher on special assignment perhaps to do the achievement testing, the speech language therapist, and any other related service special discipline person, depending on the case at hand, so that they would be a freestanding unit taking care of. There's a tremendous amount of time and energy that goes into that assessment, the accumulation of that data that comes to the table. By having them focused on that, you can take some of the pressure off of your building-based psychologists, for example, and others. your teachers would still be involved. Yeah. You bet. Thank you for the question. Staff support. There was a widespread appreciation on the part of those interviewed for the support of the district to professional development. You clearly have faculty who want and believe in continuous growth in their professional practice. Even as they were acknowledging your support, in the very same breath, they would say, and we want more. We smile when we hear this because we hear it in excellent districts all over the country. Great teachers want to become greater teachers, and they know that we have changing student demographics, we have changing needs and expectations, and we want to be engaged in best practice and building our own capacity to address those needs. It was also noted that the district does provide adequate resources for teaching and learning. That was a consistent theme in response to our question, do you have what you need to engage in the teaching and learning process? We got a resounding yes, and that was also attributable to the current administration in many ways. We looked at the district administration structure for administration of special ed, as we do in every district for whom we do this analysis, and we found that it was logically configured and rational and understaffed. We will give you comparative data in the full report that demonstrates what we would have expected for a district of your size and resource. We also are aware that the district went through a downsizing a number of years ago as a function of a downturn in the economy and budgetary realities. We have a proposal that we'll share with you for your consideration. Areas of opportunity under staff support, if to the extent that your budget allows, and gosh, I love doing this right after you've done a budget workshop. This is just great. Let me spend some money for you, right? To the extent that your budgets allow, we recommend furtherance and enhancement of your professional development program. You can survey staff on current and emergent needs. We consistently hear some common threads across excellent districts. People want to know more about classroom instructional interventions to support struggling learners. They want to know more and more about how to support students with social, emotional, and behavioral and mental health needs. There's a consistent request for role-relevant professional development for paraprofessionals related to their day-to-day activities. Those are just some examples that come to mind. Another is to consider restructuring the special education department. One model that we would think is worthy of your consideration would be to create assistant directors at the elementary and secondary levels. And the next slide actually shows you shows you a depiction of that. And I want to hasten to add, so there's no misinterpretation, this report focuses exclusively on exceptional education and has no implications whatsoever for pupil personnel services. This is not relevant to BPS. We're focused on the special ed component. Michael, we're on the first staffing chart. Do you want to talk to that?
Sure, John. Would you mind backing up just, I just want to make one more point on the proposed model.
Yes, please.
So one of the things that you're going to see in the report are ratios, what we call availability ratio indices, which compares the amount of staff you have to the amount of students served. And when we look at that proposed model of the assistant directors, when we look at the administrative ratio, even with that model, it would bring the ratio of 468 students with disabilities for every one administrator. So even with that model, it would be more leanly staffed than our experience. I'd mentioned when we introduced ourselves that John, Rich, and I had been in doing these types of analyses all the way from Long Island to your area and all points in between. And we get to see what other districts have in terms of administration. And typically, between 200 and 300 students in special education have one administrator. So even, again, with this model, the district will be leanly staffed, but we think more appropriately staffed or more should I say, staff to expectation, which again would allow for more uniformity and consistency of services. So I just want to make that point, John, before we move on.
Thank you, Michael. An interesting question came up today, and I think it merits repeating today. We are never brought into districts for the purpose of either creating or eliminating positions. We've never, in my awareness, been asked to do that. If we were asked, we would decline the offer. Our goal is singular in our work, to support the district in meeting its goals for students with disabilities. We give you the data, the decisions always reside with you.
Can I just ask?
Thank you, John. So the next chart is
I'm
what we
sorry.
alluded to.
Hold it, Michael, just one second.
Can I just ask a point of clarification? So, currently, the 468 students, is that our district? That number that was given?
Michael, the 468 students, was that from West Seneca? Is that West Seneca data?
I'm sorry, John, I couldn't hear the question. Please ask that again.
Can you repeat your
Yeah,
question,
the
please?
question is, I'm just looking for clarification. I just heard the number 468 students with disabilities to one admin. Is that in West Seneca, or did I mishear that?
That's part of the ratio that we would look toward. The 468 was not West Seneca data, was it, Michael?
It would be what West Seneca would be if with this assistant
With
director
this
model.
In other words, if you added those two positions, it would still be one administrator for every 468 identified students,
Okay.
which
Okay.
is still leanly staffed in our experience.
Right, and then that 250 to one admin, that's more typical in other districts.
That's our data, yes,
Thank you.
yes.
Okay, just wanted to make sure I heard
Yeah.
that right.
So then currently our ratio would be higher than that now.
Correct.
Okay.
Or lower, depending on your perspective.
Yeah,
Yes.
sorry.
While we're on this subject, if I may, and I know your time is precious, it's important to note, and it's not easy to see from a distance, what the costs are of being lean in administration and special ed. When you are lean, invariably, even the best of administrators gravitate of necessity toward keeping the district in compliance. So they are consumed with the operations of the Committee on Special Education, notifications, timeliness of assessments, placements, and so forth, which is great. Your district is not out of compliance. What isn't so evident is what they cannot get to. Even the hardest working people cannot get to visioning, program development, quality assurance, support to staff development, et cetera, all of the things that take a good program from okay to being an excellent program for your students. And the bottom line is, with every single decision that all of you make, is when we do it well, our students benefit. When we don't, they are the ultimate ones who pay the price. And those are the hidden costs to too many people, I'm afraid. Community people, God bless them, they don't see that from afar. They say, okay, you look administratively top-heavy. In every community I ever worked, there was a contingent that felt we were administratively top-heavy, no matter how lean we were. They've not done these jobs. These are incredibly demanding jobs, and your people, of necessity, decide we've got to keep the district in compliance with the mandates of the law, obviously. I won't beat a dead horse. We'll move on. Thank you.
Thank you.
Michael?
Yep. So thank you, John. So we alluded to what this next chart would address. It's really looking at the ratio of different disciplines within special education or exceptional education, depending on the discipline. So we've got the full-time equivalents, basically ARI is the ratio, the average, the standard deviation. Now the standard deviation is, again, pulled from our experience in New York. So we've got some really nice data with average resource districts. So we can see where West Seneca would fall based on these different disciplines. So it ranges all the way from on the leanly staffed side for teachers, because that ratio of 12.2 to 1 compares to an expectation of 10 to 1. So there's fewer special ed teachers. And then when we go down the line, mostly within expectations, OT staff is highly staffed. So when we look at the ratio of OT staff to students with disabilities, when we look at the average and the standard deviation, it falls on the high side. In the full report, you're going to see commentary. We really do a deep dive on some of these disciplines. We look at schedules, things like indirect time, direct time, individual versus group. We compare it to other metrics that we have based on national associations. So again, this is really just a snapshot. In the full report, you're going to see much more data regarding some of the workload analyses.
Michael, would you just share quickly who is included in behavioral health providers?
John, I'm sorry, could you repeat the question?
Yes. Could you share who is included in behavioral health providers?
Yes, the behavioral health providers, which is the last one, includes social workers, counselors, and school psychologists. Because they can all support the social emotional learning and health of students. We see them as a single entity, but we also talk about psychologists in of themselves because we've got that data.
We're on the next slide.
And again, we just want to acknowledge that the district has been very sensitive to the needs in special education, that there's been a 28.3% growth in special education and exceptional children's staff. We look at the trend data. So we just did want to acknowledge that the district has really been very, very aware and intentional with their staffing model. So it has increased. So those data that we report is sort of where the district is at right now. If we had done these analysis 5 years ago, clearly it would not have been as within expectations across those disciplines as we found. So in terms of areas of opportunity, as is in process, and again, we want to acknowledge the district is very intentional. A lot of ideas that we had or recommendations were things that were already in place. So what we're talking about here is revisiting systematic district-wide entry and exit guidelines or criteria for related services, who should qualify for services like speech and language, occupational therapy, physical therapy within that educational, not that medical model, maybe guidelines about what should be individual versus group, understanding it is the I is individualized, but the district can have sort of guiding policies and philosophies to guide the process for the CSE teams. Specific to teacher aides, the district might consider adding quantitative parameters for eligibility. So in other words, there are guidelines from the New York Department of Education. We have a rubric that we've been in conversation with the district that might be a nice supplement to that. It adds a quantitative parameter that already exists in terms of determining who needs a one-to-one teacher's aid. Optimize co-teaching opportunities with the requisite processes and administrative capacities. I know that's something John will be talking about. Again, because so many of our areas in organization overlap with the programmatic, sometimes it's hard to think of them as discrete entities. But certainly co-teaching is something that's subject to the master schedule, and there's a way, again, to optimize the number of teachers you have for student outcomes. And again, this is a longitudinal analysis of where the district is in terms of its expenditures devoted to special education. So really the metric is cost per special education student. And you can see that historically, and although this doesn't necessarily include the last couple of years because New York Department of Special Education, the data tends to be at least a year or two behind what's current. So we can report on current data, but in terms of looking at the historical data, the district has spent fewer dollars per special ed student as compared to other counties, other districts within Erie County, other average need resource districts in the state and the state average.
So now we're going to talk a little bit about the continuum of supports broad-based, specifically response to intervention, or RTI, which is To be clear, a general education initiative, not a special ed initiative. Nevertheless, when we're brought in to look at special education, we always do something of a deep dive into RTI because of its direct implications for special education. Specifically, in such systems where RTI is strong, special ed numbers tend to stay within a reasonable level. As RTI, in systems where RTI is not fully effectively implemented, people are looking for supports for students, and more students tend to wind up being referred to the Committee on Special Education. When we interviewed on the issue of RTI, the perspectives were varied across interviewees. Some people thought it was in pretty good shape. Some people thought it was in great need of improvement. In general, I think it's safe to say people think of it as a work in progress with some distance yet to go to full implementation. One of the key observations that we drew from the interviews was the perception that RTI is inconsistently implemented from building to building. There is a lot of good work going on in your 9 schools on behalf of students. People have really developed some good creative supports for students, but they're doing it in islands of isolation, if you will. Collectively, the knowledge base and the wisdom and the experience of staff across this district is up to the challenge of almost any student. So one of the things that's a theme for us in thinking about West Seneca is how to bring these great talents together. Staff indicated a desire to reinvigorate RTI. Well, we would concur, with more consistency and commitment through professional development opportunities for staff, for example. Despite these challenges, there are many innovative practices going on and good interventions in place. From a quantitative perspective, your district has over 17% of its students with IEPs in special education. You also have had a growth over the last 5 years in students in special ed of 2.3%. When we compare that with other school districts in the state and across Erie County, you are higher by a couple of points than Erie County schools and by 3 points higher than the state in terms of percentage of students. It's not a huge number, but it's higher than you would like. 17% is a pretty high number. Also, your growth of 2.3% over the past 5 years compares with the Erie County growth of less than 1% and a state growth of less than 1%. So you're more than double the rate of growth in special education of your neighboring school districts. That's an attention getter. You know, it's not pointing a finger of blame, it's just data, but it's cause for reflection. When we look at the students in special ed who have low needs, high incidence kinds of disabilities like learning disability, other health impaired, and speech language impaired, those are not off the charts. If you were broken, those types of needs would be higher in your district, that more students with those kind of lower needs would be identified. So it says that perhaps your RTI is being somewhat effective. You're comparable with the county and state. But again, still room for some growth. Areas of opportunity. We think that you want to consider how you can get RTI to be the singular purview of curriculum and instruction, not special education. That leadership and curriculum and instruction may want to create a strategy for bringing this all together, if you will, the unification of initiatives and systemization of your processes and procedures around RTI. Start with the basic. Look at your RTI plan. Is it in the shape you want it to be? If it is, great. If it's not, tune it up. And then get it out there into active implementation consistently across the district. Continue to have personnel within exceptional education as supports to RTI. We don't want to create artificial barriers that keep specialists from helping students, but it is not the purview of special ed to be the responsible entity for the general ed initiative.
Just a point of clarification, so you're saying that the RTI and multi-tiered support system should be underneath curriculum instruction, not guided by special education?
Yes, they should be supported by special ed, but they are the primary purview of general ed. Thank you for clarifying that, yes. Your in-district special education program, you have a substantial and multivariable kind of continuum of special ed services within the district. 62% of your students with disabilities are spending at least 80% of their day with non-disabled peers in general education programming. That's a good number. An IEP review suggests that there are both celebrations to be had as well as opportunities for improvement. If you give me just 1 second, I had made a note. For example, your IEPs have excellent transition planning included, and they do a great job on such things as documenting students' present levels of performance. Some areas of opportunity include linking student goals and objectives to grade level curriculum and standards. So there's always room for improvement. Michael, did you want to talk to the longitudinal graduation rates?
Yeah, I'll just briefly mention, John, clearly based on this data, the graduation rates for students with disabilities, one of the IDEA indicators is to look at how students with disabilities are doing in terms of their graduation, their dropout rates. So they're basically the converse of each other. But if we just look at graduation rates, historically, the students with disabilities in the district have been behind county averages in terms of the graduation rates. So that is, again, an area of opportunity. In the report, we have devoted quite a bit of time to talking about what some of those strategies might be, transition specialists, having sort of analyses, ex post facto analyses of what students graduated and what students didn't graduate, different areas of engagement for the secondary level to make sure that students with disabilities have access to every possible career tech ed opportunity for student engagement. So within the report, we're not just reporting the data. There's sort of best practices, again, that we know the district is aware of, but perhaps, again, these can be operationalized as part of a strategic plan.
I know when I looked at this data, I didn't like it at first glance, and then I looked a little more in depth at it and realized that there is a silver lining here if you look at the trend. The more recent 3 years, you're on a positive trajectory here, and you want to keep that going. And I looked particularly with a smile at 2021, where for the first time there you surpassed the county averages for graduation of students with disabilities.
Just a quick question in terms of that data. Is that only taking into account 4-year graduation rate? Does it include students who graduate over summer or after your 5th year?
Michael, that's a good question. Thank you. Is this the 4-year graduation rate, or does it include summer graduates, August graduates?
It's based on graduating the graduation year. So it's based on that graduating class.
So the 4-year model?
Yes.
4-year. Thank you. It would be interesting to see the August data on that as well. Thank you for asking that. In-district special education programs, some areas of opportunity. Continue to collaborate with staff on the IEP writing. This is in the best of districts. And we consider you one of them. This is an annual, ongoing endeavor. IEPs are a moving target. You have changes in the mandates of the State Education Department with some frequency. You also have attrition and turnover in staff. So you're dealing with new people and new requirements. Annual training in IEP writing is not overkill. It's really a necessity. As stated previously, optimizing co-teaching opportunities with requisite process and administrative capacities. We'd love to see that best practice well done at all levels. You have it in the core areas at the secondary level already. We'd love to see it at the elementary level when you talk about vertical articulation. If best practice is available at any level, why not have it at every level? Several suggestions in the report to help address graduation rates, and you're going to be receiving that full report soon. Out-of-district placements, another area among many of celebration for West Seneca. You have 9% of your identified students placed in out-of-district programs. That's a small number, to your credit. There is a commitment that is palpable. When I personally interviewed 74 people, and it was in every one of your schools. There is a palpable commitment to keeping your students in West Seneca schools, in every building I spoke with. That's commendable, and you've done a very good job with it. Areas of opportunity, continue to focus on the requisite requirements for keeping students in and potentially bringing students back from out-of-district placements. Do you have the physical plant? Do you have the staff? Do you have the programmatic strengths and skill sets and so forth to support students who formerly were going out of district? But again, you're starting from a very, very advantageous position. You're doing a great job on this. Also, we would recommend consideration of a dedicated transition specialist, someone who can focus on the transitioning of your aging out and graduating students. We think it's an investment that promotes the long view. I know in my districts, we always celebrated how many students we got into the best schools and where they were going and all of that, and we were proud of it, and rightly so. And it took us a long time to wake up and say, but how are they doing once we get them into these schools? Similarly here, a transition specialist can not only do the pre-planning and support, but can do the follow-up that ensures that we're fine-tuning our support to students to ensure perseverance and success in whatever mode they choose post-secondarily. In summary, if somebody woke me up at 3 o'clock in the morning and put a flashlight in my face and said, what's the most important thing you learned at West Seneca? The message of West Seneca to me is there's a whole lot of good work being done on every variable that we looked at. How do we bring it together and get geometric strengthening of that impact on students in terms of learning and achievement? Whether it's special ed continuum or it's RTI or related services, at every level there is great work going on in this district. The key themes: create that elementary and secondary diagnostic team. We would urge those to be considered. Reorganize the special ed department for administrative purposes by strengthening it to get to those important yet untouched areas of program development, quality assurance, and so forth. Systematize RTI and consider the addition of a transition specialist. Those are the key priorities for us looking at your district. The decisions, as always, reside with you. Now I'm going to turn to our financial expert, my colleague, Rich Labrie.
Thank you, John. My role is to look at transportation and Medicaid reimbursement. When we look at transportation, we look at basically two different things. How cost-effective is the operation? And then secondly, how efficient is the operation? And one of the things we look at, as you know, you run a split type of operation where you contract out for vehicles and you also self-operate for a number of vehicles. One of the things we obviously look at in contracting is we measure what that cost, and we look at the typical cost per day per bus as the number that we look at. And I was actually very surprised when I looked at your contract and saw that you actually had a reduction in your cost per day per bus over 4 years of a minus 3.33%. And I will say that there is a commendation in our report that whoever did your contract negotiation should be commended for ending up with a what we call a highly advantageous contract for the school district. The other thing that we saw is that your contract going forward is indexed to cost of living index. And why that's important and why we think that's a good model to use is that you share the economic future with your contractor. And if you don't do that, what happens is that they take their crystal ball, they take the worst case scenario, they build it into their cost per day per bus, and you pay for it whether that scenario ever becomes a reality or not. This way here, you share that cost. Having said that, when you look at the cost, the CPI going forward from this year to next year, given what the economy has done, it's going to be a relatively high number compared to what your previous increases have been. The other thing that we look at with regard to cost effectiveness is we look at what we consider to be a standard benchmark. It's a benchmark used by the Department of Education as well as an industry standard. And that benchmark is based upon the cost of transportation or your transportation budget as a percentage of your school district budget. And typically, if that ratio is 5% or less, you're considered to be cost effective. And in your case, your budget transportation budget has been about 4.81% of the total district budget over the past several years, which leads us to say that you are, in fact, cost effective. The transportation budgets have increased an average of about 3.07 over the past 4 years. And we found, given what's going on with the economy, what's going on with the shortage of school bus drivers nationally, that districts have had to increase wages and benefits in order to be able to both recruit and retain quality drivers. And you've been able to do that with what we consider to be a modest 3.07 budget increase from year to year. The other thing we look at is we look at your vehicle replacement program. And one of the reasons we look at that is that when districts are in trouble, oftentimes the things that suffer are replacement of school buses or maintenance projects get put aside. And we were happy to see that you have a very active and working capital reserve, which is what you call the replacement program. And having seen what you did or what you're planning on doing this evening with your budget, just testifies to the fact that we feel that that's a very positive for the school district. What that means is that you're running a number of buses that are under warranty, and you're minimizing both breakdowns and maintenance of school vehicles. We found when we look at wages and benefits in particular that the district currently pays between 83% and 90% the cost of health insurance for drivers and attendants, depending again on the plan that they select. And this combination of wage rates and benefits allows the district to be competitive with the private sector for recruitment and retention of quality drivers and personnel. And let me digress for a second. Given the driver shortage nationally for CDL drivers, school bus drivers in particular, your competition is no longer with your next door neighbor, a next door school district. Your competition for drivers is FedEx, Amazon Prime, trucking companies. Everyone's looking for drivers. And the advantage that they have is that they can offer sign-on bonuses. Amazon Prime in November was offering up to $5,000 for sign-on bonuses, offering full-time employment with full benefit packages, full-time with guaranteed overtime during the holiday season. And it's difficult for school bus contractors and school districts that own and operate their own buses to compete with that private sector, given that school bus drivers work a split shift, which in itself is not a desirable, and it's also less than full-time typically. And the people who are now looking to be bus drivers are looking to make a living wage from that experience, as opposed to strictly being senior citizens who are looking to augment their retirement or someone looking to augment their income. And so, we bring that because it's something that has to stay in the forefront as you look, because the driver shortage is not going to go away very quickly. And so you have to be cognizant of being competitive. And just to throw out a statistic, the average Walmart driver now earns about $110,000 a year. And so kind of put it into perspective. One of the pet peeves that I have is that I look at the insurance portfolio for school districts and contractors. I look specifically to see if you are requiring and if you have insurance for underinsured and uninsured motorists. And one of the reasons we do that is that in the event of an accident with a school bus, there's a possibility of catastrophic injuries and a large number of medical payments. And the school board has a fiduciary responsibility to the public to make sure that its contractors and itself are carrying adequate insurance to protect the lives and the interests of students. And I'm happy to say that I saw that in your insurance portfolio, and I certainly commend you for having the foresight to be able to do that. Let me stop with that. Do you have any questions with regard to transportation before I jump to?
No.
Good.
Thank you.
With regard to Medicaid, it's now a work in progress. We had several questions come up in the last 2 weeks with regard to our method of computation of your potential revenue. I met with the business office staff this afternoon. We went through not only how we compute the potential Medicaid revenue, but I even brought the reports that we gathered in November and December that support the data that went into the computation. And we found an error in one of the reports from November. And so we are going to redo that part of the report. I expect that you'll have it probably within the next several weeks. So at this point, it is a work in progress.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Does anyone have a question? No?
Ladies and gentlemen, any other questions for us this evening?
No, maybe not.
I would offer one observation as we thank you for the privilege of partnering with you in this work. From our perspective, the types of leadership teams, board superintendent leadership teams, that call in a third party and say, we'll show you everything. Tell us where we're doing well, tell us where we can do better, are exactly the kinds of leaders we need and our students need. So our hat's off to you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks for your time. Thank you, Michael.
Thank you. Okay, would anyone like to take a break, a 5-minute break? No? Anyone? Or we'll continue on to our next presentation unless anybody needs a restroom.
Go ahead.
Okay.
I know who you are.
Okay.
I was waiting for like the 5-minute break.
Thank you very much.
Take your time. We'll wait till you're ready. We do have another presentation from Young and Wright. So once Ms. Shanahan is done setting that up, you are welcome to come up.
I think there's some stale sweet tarts in there. Stale sweet tarts. I think there's some in there.
No, you do not have to wait for Ed. No,
So
he's-
this is Sean and Tori from Young and Wright, and I know you've met them before, so I don't think any formal introductions are in order, but they're going to give us a little update
Thank you.
tonight.
Thank you for waiting, too.
No problem.
We appreciate your patience.
Tori and I just have a brief update to provide to everyone on all of the various capital improvement projects going on in the district, and talk a little bit about schedule and then where we are on your plans with your long-term planning with your building condition survey and potential ideas for upcoming projects. I guess we can skip the list of all those people there for tonight. I'll let Tori speak to this.
So this year's capital outlay project is happening here at West Elementary. We're infilling the pool. We just opened bids for this in February. They came in pretty favorable, so we were able to add a little bit extra scope to the project, which is creating an exterior masonry opening in the wall, so that way in the future you guys can add some double doors in that space. So construction is going to start in a couple weeks for this, and it's going to wrap up by the end of June. Just a quick update with Smart Schools. This project is about to wrap up. The contractors are working on their punch list items and submitting their closeout documents now. Phase 1B is your concessions building at West Senior. We had a little snafu with one of the contractors, but we're sorting that out, and we're still targeting to get that open by spring sports. And then the remaining site work will be ongoing depending how weather allows us to finish that concrete work.
Okay, our Phase 2 capital improvement project, I won't read through all of the list of the scope that we're working towards, but we do have a couple of things that have to do with the schedule. The West Middle School music wing renovation and addition has actually wrapped up this past week. Furniture is being delivered, I believe, this coming Friday, and they'll be installing and setting that up so that the spaces will be ready for use. And then over the Easter break, we have a little bit of terrazzo work that'll have to be completed to get that 100%. But other than that, it should be able to be used within the next few days. Upcoming work dealing with secure entrance, vestibules, canopies, a lot of reconfiguration of some of the main office space, and work at the outside on the site work side of things, which we're obviously waiting for. This work we're ramping up now. We've started to work with contractors towards schedules again. They've actually stepped in and started to do a little bit of preliminary work so that they can get ahead of the schedule, because the goal for all of this work, including the site work, is to have it all completed before the start of school or into the early fall of 2023.
So Phase 3 scope is the work that's taking place at the high schools. So the major scope at West Senior is renovating the science rooms, PA clock system, and creating a secure entrance. At East Senior, it's the same scope with the science rooms, creating a new main office with a secure vestibule. We're renovating the art rooms and the music rooms as well. So schedule-wise, we just opened bids for this project in January. Overall, the bids came in within the overall budget for the referendum. We're able to take a couple alternates, which is the access control for the classrooms, which is what we did at the middle schools too. And then just going back, to Phase 3, construction is going to be starting this spring. We're going to start at East Senior, and then we're going to move to West Senior. Overall, the project will be done at the end of 2024. And then the first phase of Phase 4, we broke out the roof scope at the elementary schools just so we could expedite those drawings and our SED submission. So that way construction for this could actually begin this summer as opposed to next summer or 2025 with the rest of Phase 4. So we're waiting on SED approval. We're about to open bids for this scope of work shortly. And then the remaining of Phase 4 scope, majority of it is creating secure entries for the vestibules, PA clock system, drinking fountain replacements, that kind of thing. And since this is the last phase of the capital improvement project, we'll be working with the district to try to incorporate as many alternates as we can, so that way we can really maximize your overall budget for the overall referendum amount.
So I know the schedule here is hard to read, but based on the slides that Tori and I have gone over here, we've got construction ending with the entire capital improvement project that was voted on in 2018, ending somewhere around 2025. So we're getting there. Any questions on the current capital projects?
Just a real quick one. You're talking about new PA systems, new clocks. Mm-hmm. They're not like digital, right? Like we still get to keep the proper hands. I'm serious. I don't want to lose that. Like there's not many places in the world that exist anymore. Are they going digital or are they?
I don't know what's.
I believe it's digital, right? The same ones that are going at the middle schools, Joe. Yeah.
So they're digital?
Yeah.
Seriously?
Next capital project.
Can we? Yeah, I want to make a motion to add manual. Oh, that's disappointing.
I actually have a question about Phase 2 for East Middle. Are they are also getting a secure entrance. When is the work for that starting and finishing?
They're actually starting the foundations for that canopy now.
Okay.
Yep.
And then when do you anticipate the secure
That's
entrance?
anticipated to be ready for when the start of school opens in the fall.
In fall of
Yeah,
2023? Okay, thank you.
Okay, so moving on to our last piece for tonight, the Facilities Committee meeting. I know we've provided a few updates in our past couple of meetings. At our last meeting, we actually had a very good discussion about methods to prioritize the scope of work from items that were in your building condition survey. So that's a lot of the nuts and bolts type of work, replacement work, things like that. And we're working with the committee on a couple different methods to prioritize it. We also, over the course of a number of meetings, talked to people in pretty much every one of your buildings and started to talk about some of the common threads that we were seeing in non-building conditions survey type of items that people were interested in us looking into. We've listed them here. Climate control was one of them, playgrounds, libraries, auditorium renovations, site circulations, and renovating restrooms. These seem to be the ones that came to the top of the list. So we are now building that into our summary so that we can develop some budgets for what that would look like at each one of your buildings, and then get back into working with the committee to prioritize that and align it with the budget that you may have for a capital improvement vote. So, making good progress there. Any other questions for us tonight? Okay, well, it's March. We'll come back at the beginning of construction in the spring and give you another update then.
Okay, great. Thank you
you
so
very
much.
Okay, we are going to fly through this agenda.
All right, board members, we're going to go on to the consent agenda. So consent agenda, that includes number 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. So I'll give you a moment to look that over. As usual, it's all of our personnel, our reports. So when anyone is ready, I would appreciate a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Okay. A motion to approve the consent agenda by Diane. May I have a second?
I'll second.
Okay. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Nope. Passes unanimously. So then we will move on to new business, 9.
The consent agenda went up to what?
It went up to 8.
Well, it's 8, thank you.
So we'll move on to new business. And I'd like to break up 9 because we do have to vote on G and H, the nomination for the board, the BOCES board members. So 1 second. Okay, may I have a motion to accept 9A through 9F? And I will give you a minute to look that over.
I'll make a motion to accept it.
Okay. May I have a second?
I'll second.
Jan seconds. Any discussion?
I got a couple things.
Sure.
First thing, just taking a look at like trips and stuff. Looks like, I'm glad to see that, trips are happening. I've always wondered the process for the trip approval, like, it gets to the point where it comes to the board to approve. I'm pretty sure, and if someone wants to comment on this, the trip's already planned and going through, like, where do we fall on the level of approval? I know we're the final say, but pretty much this trip is, like, is there, is it happening?
Ready to go.
Right?
Right.
You know what I'm asking, like, I mean, like, should we be approving these sooner than they happen, or, because spring is almost here? And I'm not, there's no trouble I'm causing, I've had people ask me why do trips take so long to approve, and I'm assuming there's a whole process involved. I've never really been involved in it. Everyone's looking at me like, did I open up a can of worms that I shouldn't have? Oh, okay.
It looks like this trip specifically is just a change in dates, so it's set to the board again.
Okay, so this is the same one we approved back in August? Okay, then I'm an idiot. I apologize.
No, I mean, typically, especially if they have to do fundraising, I think we've even had some email communications before too, where some of the people that are running the trips, for instance, like DC or something like that at the middle school, they'll say, let's get it on there early so that we can start our fundraising.
Okay.
So generally speaking, they want to be respectful, of the board and not, kind of get out ahead of the board. That's not to say there couldn't be like a trip that they don't have to do any fundraising for, a sports team traveling somewhere, something along those lines. But typically speaking, if they're going to be doing fundraising, there is a form they have to fill out. They actually submit it to Nicole. And basically, there's a letter that kind of outlines details. I think we went through this last year.
Yeah, I think Pete was involved in some questioning on the
Yeah.
forms and stuff.
Yep.
Yeah, I'm fine with it. I was just curious
No, it's a good
if
question.
they're allowed to work on trips before we approve them.
I mean, they work on to the extent that they do a little bit of planning, but they honestly, the caveat is always the board has to approve any trip before anybody's, before, don't do any fundraising, don't do anything like that.
Okay, just curious. Again, a couple people looked at me like, you shouldn't have brought it up, but.
No, it's a good
Yeah, I was just
question.
curious, because I know like I'm happy to see these trips going on. And then the other thing I was just gonna bring up is I really love seeing these donations. West Sports Boosters for the, unified sports team, and, we got a PTO, Northwood, giving money for some really cool stuff, so I'm just happy to see that. That's it for discussion, sorry.
No problem. We also have the policy, the athletic eligibility policy. So that's also on there. So did I get a second?
Yeah.
I did. I get John. Eric got Jan. Okay, so can we vote? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Nope, passes 7-0. Okay, so if we can move on to G and H. These are the nominations for the BOCES, Board of Education members, and if you recall, last time you received letters, there are only 2 people. So I thought we could have a little bit of discussion on this if you wanted to, or we could just approve them. So may I have a motion to, hold on a second, let me get their names. 1 second. There they are. Yep, they have the forms of the agenda. Thank you. Okay, so, Nicole, can I do them together, 9G and 9H, with their names? Okay, so may I have a motion to accept 9G and 9H?
I'll move on that.
Okay, and can I have a second?
I'll second.
Ed seconds. Okay, any discussion? Nope.
When you say there's 2 people,
Right.
that's it, so they're,
Janet.
is the whole race uncontested then? It's just the 2
Yes.
seats on the BOCES board? Okay.
Right, so yes, their name, so 9G would be Janet Plar, and then 9H would be John Sherman. And those are the 2 we received. So I just wanted to give everyone an opportunity to.
Nice of them to step up
Mary
and do it.
Kelsey serves on that,
Yes.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So these are the 2. Okay, so then, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, passes 7-0. And then I can ask for a motion just for the remainder of the agenda, which is 9I through 9L.
I'll make a motion.
Okay, Diane, may I have a second?
I'll second.
Ben seconds. Is there any discussion? Nope? Okay. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Nope. Okay, passes 7-0. All right. Financial reports, I hope you all have time to look at those. And we'll move on to Board of Ed discussion. We don't have anything on the agenda for Board of Ed discussion, but I just wanted to open it up to anybody in case they had something they wanted to share. So, the floor is yours if you'd like it.
So this clock thing. Can we get like one ceremonial clock somewhere in a school?
Right here.
Yeah, well, it's gonna be gone though.
No, those can stay.
Yeah, the battery after
Oh, we're good?
Well, I'm not, are we still talking board discussion?
Yes, if Ed is done, you
Yeah,
have the floor,
yeah.
then. You can have the floor now, Vince.
Yeah, I would like to address the issues that was raised this week at West Senior with
Okay.
regards to the letter that came home to parents, with regards to vaping, cell phone use, I believe earbuds was in there, that it's a growing concern, and I just want to know, like, what we as a board should be doing to support our students, our staff, and our administration in dealing with this, because it feels like, we are the trustees of the district, and this is an ongoing situation that seems to be escalating, and I'm not, outside of that letter, I don't hear much about it within this room.
Well, we had the policy committee last year. We had a lot of different stakeholders, and we made a policy. So I don't know if the administration or teachers aren't adhering to the policy, and that's the problem. I don't know what it is, but we did work very hard. We worked for months and had meetings, and we talked about hats, cell phones.
Earbuds.
And, the earbuds.
Anything about vaping?
And, no, but that should just be, we have another policy on smoking and vaping.
Yeah.
So we've got these policies that the board and Jackie spearheaded this committee, and I was on the committee. We have these policies, so why is there a problem?
Well, one of the things, and I remember when that was presented, I talked about, cell phones being, there are areas where cell phones can be used. So I think it's a mixed message. I don't know.
They're not supposed to be used in the classroom.
What you permit,
Yep.
you promote. And if you're, we got kids that are addicted to cell phones. We know that. I mean, that's not even beyond argument. And to expect that they're just going to, be able to monitor themselves or build this digital citizenship, I think is a little bit, I don't know, naive. I brought up before, the increase in vaping goes along with the increase of smoke shops on every corner in West Seneca. Like, is there a conversation we can have with our town board, who is, we have educators that sit on the town board, and these things are being permitted to happen. And it's happening to our kids. So, again, as the trustees, what are we doing about that? Does it have to be, what would be the appropriate steps? I'm the newbie on the school board, so I'm looking for some guidance as to what our role is, because I feel a little bit responsible. And don't want to sit here and go, oh, well, it's, somebody else's problem, it's our problem. So what are we going to do about it is kind of my question. Yeah, I mean, the closing of bathrooms is a problem.
Yeah, it is.
Having to close bathrooms and having my son tell me that, he has to walk around to find a bathroom is, because he drinks, tons of water, because he's trying to do the right thing, it's a little bit infuriating, to tell you the truth. So, I told him he walks into a bathroom and someone's vaping, grabs their vape, throw it in the toilet, and then if whatever has to happen at that point has to happen.
And then it's happened.
So maybe it's
Take it off a wall, just get a vape
all right, I will redirect him to smash it.
Thank you, Daryl, that was me.
But point being that somebody needs to do something about that.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to jump from the cell phone thing to the vaping thing. I know they're two different categories. Was there not technology that we were looking into that could help with that situation?
There's a sensor?
A sensor, like, I know...
With vaping, are you talking?
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, and again, Matt, I'm getting the look like, we've talked about it, but I don't remember where. There's a thing
Yep.
you put in there and it...
It's just like a
smoke
Like a detector?
Yeah.
Yeah, they do have the vape detector. I have heard very, very mixed reviews on their level of functioning. I've heard that they are set off extremely easily, and there's a lot of false alarms. It's something we can certainly jump back into and exploring. I can just tell you that I've spoken to a variety of folks in other districts that say they are not interested in them anymore. They don't use them. They don't work very well.
I think the biggest problem is, again, and anyone who any adult who vapes, fine, I'm fine with it. But like, I was at a restaurant the other night with my kids, and the table next to us was vaping, like, every time the waitress would walk away. But there's no, like, continue, like, I mean, again, smoking in school, at least you had to, I mean, you had to light it, and you had, like, I mean, I remember kids in the bathroom would get caught because it takes, but the vaping thing seems to be able to be done real quick. I'm not too experienced
Yeah,
with it, but my
they're
kids tell
fast.
me that it's constant, it's always just a cloud of vape in the bathrooms, like it's.
And they throw them in the toilets to
To
Daryl's
hide,
point.
is that to hide them, or is that to get rid of them?
That's to get rid of them. They throw them in the toilets. I mean,
And then that's what,
When they're almost caught, they just ditch them,
okay.
just like you used to with your cigarettes.
I-
We really have increased our
And then
cooperation.
plugs, are they big,
Police
like when they plug
department,
it?
though, you know, with their,
Yeah, but they plug the toilet.
But Jam, they're still closing down the bathrooms at the high school.
yeah.
Because it's
yeah, I
still an
know,
issue.
But I mean, we are doing a lot of things, trying anyway, to make our schools more secure and supporting our administrators too.
So
I guess that's the key. How do we,
Yeah,
like, obviously, there had to be discussion before this letter went out to parents. You know, and I know that the letter was asking parents to, you know, be partners. But again, it's, how can we support our admin, you know, to help with this issue? Because it's been an issue for a while. You know, I've got a sophomore at West, and it is a problem for him to find an open bathroom as well. And, you know, he goes in and he sees it, and it's nonstop. So there has to be a solution to that, you know, whether it's, I don't know, putting someone outside of the doors to recognize frequent flyers. I don't know. There has to be some kind of solution.
If the student's gone for that long,
Yeah.
what are we doing?
You know, where's the teacher knowing that the kid is out for 5 or 10 minutes?
Matt, was this any,
You know.
did this come up in your conversation?
Yeah, I mean, I think the intention, if you look at the end of the letter, I mean, there's like 3 statements, you know, please talk. I mean, I think, and doesn't fix the issue. I don't think there's one magic potion that fixes the issue, but I think the increased emphasis from parents, like you're having this discussion right now, somebody's watching this right now, and that to me is a benefit. But from a parent standpoint, it's enlisting any possible resource, like, hey, maybe check your child that one more time for vapes, or talk to them about the vapes, or talk to them about, hey, are you wearing your earbuds in school when you're not supposed to, things like that. That's not the answer, and I don't think the intention of the letter was, okay, we sent this letter out, now we got it covered, and I don't think you were saying that, but.
It was, I'm glad that letter was.
Sure, oh, yeah,
I'm glad
yeah.
it raised this level of awareness.
the other problem is they're not hanging out, like, they could literally walk in, do it, and walk back out. So that's the problem, it's not like a 5-minute thing where the.
Really?
Oh, yeah.
I don't know anything about
Yeah,
that.
it's.
A lot
We've
of them
had
are
kids do it in
hanging out.
classrooms.
Again, yes, I know, and I'm saying, unfortunately, it's not,
Oh, yeah.
the way I see it is people could just do it real quick, and
Yeah,
I've
they
seen
can
it on
do it right in
buses.
class. I mean, they can do it in class
But,
with their sleeve.
Yeah. The
In the hoodie.
third thing I'll throw in there is, and I don't know if we're having these issues, are we having bathroom issues because of that trend on social media where they're actually vandalizing the bathrooms? Are we having,
We've
are we
had
having
been.
that issue?
We still having that?
Yeah, that's still, so that might be why some of the bathrooms are
Still
closed
having that
too.
issue?
The bathrooms are destroyed every day, whole day. If you want to see what's thrown in the toilets and the urinals, go to Joe Parr's office, there's a bank. They took, I think, 17 vapes out of one sewer pipe for one of the bathrooms. I unlocked the bathroom like 2 minutes after the pledge the other day. Before my custodian could get back to my office, I got called to go retrieve a vape out of the toilet, the same bathroom. In a matter of minutes, because the SRO walked in there was 5 kids that went in there snoozing on my food. They just didn't put it. It just happens that quick, and it's constantly all day, and that's why, you know, I know Vince was talking about your son not finding a bathroom. It's just as frustrating for us. We're locking every bathroom because I can't keep up with being short-staffed to take care of each of the problems that arise every day.
And that's.
And that's at both high schools.
When they say support our students, our staff, I very much include your folks in that, because you are dealing with the aftermath of that. And support the administration, because you don't have time in your day to be chasing your tail after ghosts. So, you know, there has to be a multifaceted approach to it, but I mean, the first thing is to acknowledge it. It's a problem. So I think that letter was well timed, and
One of the issues, the cameras, so we're upgrading our camera systems at the high schools as part of the smart schools money that we're getting. So that should be, I mean, it's an after-the-fact sort of thing, but if it's the same frequent flyer, I don't know who said frequent flyers, but I mean, I think that would help too. That's going to help address, when you start talking to some of the administration at the high schools, to tell you that is something they think will be very beneficial. They have had meetings, honestly, with some of the custodial staff as well, to be able to say, okay, where are you seeing this the most? How can we break up supervising? And they have limited time in their day. They're trying to handle something, so there's like routine checks of the bathrooms. You walk in and 5 kids, walk in there very quickly. I mean, I was just saying to Liz on the side, some of these vapes are little guitar pick. It's literally this tiny little thing that kids have done them in class before. I'm not trying to give any ideas here, but, where, we've caught kids, using them in class. So Vince, to your point, kind of on a larger societal issue, these vapes they're out of control, and then the fact that some of them have THC now and.
We can only control, we can control what happens in the school. We could also partner with folks that legislate and, within our town who, say, hey, yeah, sure, there's another license to open up. But I also think too that, maybe where are these kids, how are these kids out of class? Are they out of study halls? Do we have too many kids in study halls? Do we have, why do so many kids have study halls? So I think that when you start picking at it, you might get a little bit further down. You might find that there are other solutions to keep kids engaged and busy so that they don't have time to be in bathroom.
Yeah, they use hallway restrictions too, but they're not shy about it, the administration. Even if it's a temporary thing, okay, for the next 2 weeks you're on hallway restriction, it might go increasingly more significant, kind of to get at what you're talking about there in terms of like their ability to be able to, I think Diane said something too, their ability to be able to get out of class unsupervised. So that's another strategy that they utilize as well at times for kids that they find it to be a routine occurrence of them not being where they're supposed to be. So
I think we should also, we would be remiss if we didn't go to the kids and have them to help in
Sure.
having these discussions. And
Sure.
bringing them to the problem-solving table, excuse me, having World Cafe opportunities for kids to get involved and get their opinions on what would work or where are the potential issues, and just involving them in the problem-solving process might in and of itself help lessen the issue.
So I remember the vaping used to be like flavored and all that stuff, and I think New York State got rid of that. Like there's no more flavors and stuff, so like it didn't seem like it curtailed it at all. Like,
yeah.
I wonder what percentage of the kids are doing it.
There's flavors.
Yeah.
Yep. All right, well, I feel like we've covered this topic for
Yeah.
quite a long time. So we do have to move into executive. So is there any other topic anyone would like to
I guess
cover?
whatever we can do to help.
Yep.
Vince, I agree with you.
Tighten up our policies, enforce our policies. I mean, that's where the board is.
Coming up again, right? We'll be looking at that.
Yep. All right,
Every year, Diane, for conduct. Okay.
thank you. Is there anything else any
Thank you
board
for
member?
listening.
You're welcome.
Okay.
All right, then may I have a motion to move into executive session to discuss the employment history of a particular individual and to discuss collective negotiations pursuant to Article 14 of the Civil Service Law.
I'll make the motion to do what Liz said.
Okay, may I have a second?
I'll second.
Diane? Any discussion? Nope, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, thank you, everybody.
Night, everyone.
Yep, good night. We will not come back and conduct any business, so have a good night.